I want to say I planned it. I didn't plan any of it. I just fed a stray for 11 years and forgot to stop. The alert went out station-wide at 0600, the kind that pings every wristpad on Meridian docks whether you asked for it or not. Administrator Bray's voice, smooth as poured resin. Security alert. The Palisade Hall has been condemned pending pest eradication. All residents are advised to avoid the understory during operations. I was already inside when it played, up on the catwalk with a bucket of bolts, and I just kept working. 30 years of maintenance teaches you that alerts are for other people until they aren't. The Palisade Hall used to be a real theater, back when this station still pretended to be a colony instead of a loading dock with ambitions. Now it was condemned. Its stage caved in on one side, its seats stripped for scrap 2 administrations ago. Officially, it held nothing but structural risk and vermin. Officially. I'd found her under that caved stage 11 years back, half-starved, black-furred, small enough to fit inside my coat. Something had killed her mother, and whatever else had been in that litter. I didn't report it. You report a predator cub on a trade station, they gas the den, and call it a public service. I fed her instead, quiet, off the manifest, out of my own ration credits, and I called it nothing at all until she was too big to call nothing. By then I'd started calling it the Understory Accord, just to myself, just so it would sound like a decision, and not like a man who couldn't leave a starving animal to die twice. She grew the way big cats grow when nobody's stunting them for a pit fighting circuit, long, black, quiet as falling dust. The dock workers who serviced the hall's old ventilation started calling it haunted, said they'd catch a shape in the rafters, a pair of eyes low and gold, gone before the light caught fully. They called her the Phantom. They weren't wrong that something was there. They were wrong about everything else. She found her own mate 3 years in. I never saw him arrive, just started finding 2 sets of prints in the dust of the catwalk, then 4. 2 cubs, born up in what used to be the lighting rig, raised on rats and station runoff and whatever meat I could get without anyone asking why my ration draws had climbed. I watched them grow the way you watch anything you love and can't claim, from a distance, quietly, terrified every single day that someone would notice. There were nights I sat on that catwalk with a cold ration bar and watched the 4 of them move through the rafters like something poured rather than walked, and I understood, the way you understand a thing in your body before your head catches up, that I wasn't feeding pets. I was keeping a secret the size of a shuttle bay, and one day the math on that secret was going to come due. I kept telling myself I'd figure out what to do about it. I never did. I just kept showing up with the bucket. Someone finally did. I was up on the catwalk when the extermination crew's transport docked at the hall's east ramp, 4 of them in yellow hazard plate, carrying gas canisters built for something the size of a large dog. Bray came down personally, which told me everything. He liked an audience. He'd brought one. Station feed cameras, a knot of dock workers who'd gathered at the barricades because the alert had promised them a show, and somewhere behind them a council inspector with a tablet, there to confirm the condemnation was justified before the demolition permit cleared. "Calloway," Bray said, without looking up from his tablet, "you're not cleared for this deck during operations." "I do maintenance up here every week," I said. "Nothing's changed." "Everything's changed. We've had multiple reports of a large predatory organism nesting in this structure. Possibly more than one. It ends today." I looked past him at the crew checking their canister seals, and something in my chest went very still and very calm, the way it does right before you do something you can't undo. "It's not one," I said. "It's a family." Bray finally looked at me like I'd said something mildly embarrassing. "Then it's a bigger problem than we scoped, which is why we brought 4 units instead of 2. I didn't argue with him. 11 years teaches you when arguing is just noise. I climbed down off the catwalk, walked past the barricade, past the crew, past Bray himself, and out onto the collapsed stage floor where the light from the broken roof came down in one long gray column, and I stood there in full view of every camera on the station feed, and said the only thing I had. "Ash, come on out." For 3 full seconds, nothing. Long enough that I heard someone behind the barricade laugh, nervous, the kind of laugh that comes right before people start to look for the exits. Then the dust came down off the old lighting rig, and Ash dropped onto the stage in front of me without a sound, a creature her size had any business making, black-furred, low and long, twice the mass she'd been when I stopped being able to call her a cub. She didn't crouch. She didn't snarl at the crew or the cameras or the 4 canisters aimed at her chest. She walked straight to me and put her head against my hip hard enough to nearly take my legs out, the exact same gesture she'd used at 4 months old when she weighed less than my tool bag. Somewhere in the barricade crowd, somebody's canister hissed as a hand shook. "Hold," Bray said, sharper now, and I noted with some satisfaction that his voice had lost its resin polish. That was when the rest of the family came down. Her mate came off the far catwalk in one drop that put a crack in the old stage boards, black as she was but built heavier through the shoulders, the kind of animal you'd expect to see hunting something that could shoot back. Behind him came the two cubs, not cubs anymore, not by any measure that mattered, near-grown, and already taller at the shoulder than the crew's hazard plate came up their own chests. They didn't attack. They didn't have to. They simply arranged themselves, unhurried, the way a family arranges itself around a doorway they intend to hold, until I was standing in the dead center of 4 apex predators, who could have ended every person in that hall in under a minute, and instead had chosen, with total and complete indifference to the cameras, to stand very close to a maintenance man in a stained coat. The council inspector had stopped typing. I could see it from where I stood, the tablet just hanging in her hand, the eradication order unsigned. "Mr. Bray," she said, into the silence he hadn't managed to fill, "would you like to explain to the council why a 4-member Apex family, that's been quietly denning in a condemned structure for the better part of a decade, has never once harmed a resident of this station, and why your first response to discovering them was gas canisters instead of a survey team?" Bray opened his mouth. Nothing useful came out of it. I've thought about that moment a lot since. A man who liked an audience, finally getting one, and having absolutely nothing to say to it. "They're not vermin," I told the inspector, and my voice came out steadier than I expected, with Ash's weight still leaning warm against my leg. "They're not even wild, not really. They're just quiet. I've been feeding them since the small one was orphaned under that stage 11 years ago, never logged it. Didn't think anyone would let me keep her if I did. And if we'd gassed this hall today," the inspector said, "not to me, we'd have killed a family that's lived alongside this station for a decade without a single incident, over a maintenance man's silence and your paperwork." Bray didn't answer that either. He turned and walked back up the ramp instead, past his own crew, past the cameras still running, and if there is a sweeter sound than the one 400 dock workers make when they realize a man like that has just lost, standing in front of everyone, in the light of his own broadcast alert, I haven't heard it. The hall wasn't demolished. It got a new designation instead, something bureaucratic and dry that boiled down to protected structure, and I got a formal reprimand for the unauthorized feeding that nobody actually enforced, and a council stipend for ongoing wildlife stewardship that I still don't quite know how to feel about. Ash still comes down onto the stage most evenings, when the hall's quiet again and the cameras have gone somewhere else. She doesn't crouch for me anymore. She doesn't have to. She just puts her head against my hip, same as she did at 4 months old, same as she'll probably do until one of us is gone. And every single time, for one long second, this whole loud station goes as still and as certain as that column of gray light coming down through the broken roof. And nobody, not one soul on Meridian docks, calls her a phantom anymore.